Just as California passes this regulation that its doctors out there aren't going to be able to dispense COVID misinformation, if a doctor in California now sort of says something that's anti what Pfizer would say about the vaccine, he could potentially be in trouble. And Jordan Peterson, though, in Canada is going through this in a way that is too familiar. He's, of course, a famous author, famous podcaster, pundit. He's just sort of become a cultural commentator, but he's also a hero to a lot of young men who feel adrift in a society that spent so much time lifting up women that they, in too many cases, have erred in putting down men and left many of them feeling untethered, unhopeful, and uncared for. And Jordan speaks to them very effectively. So the Ontario College of Psychologists, this is the profession's governing body in Ontario where he is a psychologist, has launched an investigation of Jordan Peterson to examine complaints about his comments on Twitter and on the Joe Rogan podcast. I kid you not. They're investigating this. Okay, what did he say? Did he say, oh, my patients are dumbasses? You know, something like that, where you'd be like, oh, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. As if you're, right? No, they're mad that he called now Elliot Page, Ellen Page, the name she went by professionally for her entire acting career and by which we all know her. Nobody knows who Elliot Page is. Called her Ellen, and he called her the pronoun her instead of him. He called Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, a prick. For this, he gets investigated by his professional board. It's incredible. He went on Joe Rogan, as I said. Hold on, it goes on. He also called Justin Trudeau a puppet. They didn't like that. A couple of other examples that are worth mentioning. He objected to a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover of a plus-size model, saying, sorry, not beautiful, and no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that. It's not nice. It's his opinion. He's entitled to it. No, he could lose his license now for saying that and a couple of other random things. They are now demanding two things. That he make the following public statement. Imagine how infuriating this would be, right? If your governing board of podcast authorities told you, you must say the following sentence. It's a quote they want him to repeat. I may have lacked professionalism in public statements and during a January 25th podcast appearance. Number two, they have mandated that he take a remedial course in social media communications with a board-issued therapist. Oh my God, they're China. Canada's China. It's happening. And he, of course, has refused giving them the big middle finger, which, yay, good, please stand firm. But he could lose his license because of this. I'm horrified. Canary in the coal mine? Canada's always ahead of us a little bit on the weird wokeness overreach.
It's not the first time in Canada's recent history where they came across this. It's actually pursuant to our previous segment. A guy named Ezra Levant, who's a conservative commentator there, used to be the publisher of the Western Standard magazine, got in the crosshairs of I believe it's called the Human Rights Commission. Moynihan, you might remember this.
That's what it's called, yeah.
They have a Human Rights Commission that will pull you to have a secret hearing. So it's a governmental or quasi-governmental body to have a secret hearing about your offense. In his case, was related to making comments about Muslims and the Prophet Muhammad. They published the image of the Prophet Muhammad after the cartoon controversy in 2006. He ended up writing a piece. He leaked out what happened in the secret meeting online, and it caused enough of an outroar at the Human Rights Commission that he was able to sidestep the worst possible sanction of it. But every day, you were talking earlier, Megan, about how the First Amendment, damn it, we're America. Absolutely correct. Because we are cousins to the Canadians in so many different ways. They don't have a First Amendment. It shows really badly. It showed during the trucker protests, as did a lot of really kind of authoritarian differences between the countries. Sadly, we're aping too many of those here in this country as well, or the Biden administration is trying to. It's awful. Imagine that you have a professional licensing board similar to the previous case. That's not one of his patients that has complained. He's a clinical psychologist, and the best stuff in his books, by the way, have to do with his clinical practice, not necessarily him throwing rhetorical grenades into the tent of wokeness. It's just him talking, insightfully about what happens and observations that he gleans from talking to people and trying to help them. None of his patients complained. Why is a professional board saying a damn thing? If there's anyone who's supposed to teach a remedial course in Twitter communications, it might be the guy with probably the most Twitter followers of anybody in Canada. I don't know. Like maybe he's got something to say. He goes a little bit overboard sometimes, but he's clearly used social media to create an entire industry there. It's horrifying that they've done this, and not surprising. And I'm glad and not surprised that he's telling them to go shove it.
But that's the problem.
And he said, to your point, who? Tell me who complained, who specifically, who exactly was harmed, how, when, to what degree, and how is that harm measured? And he says, it's difficult to communicate with as many people as I do and to say anything of substance without rubbing at least a few people the wrong way now and then. Of course, and he says, these criticisms have nothing to do with my work in psychology. They're critiques of my public comments on cultural, political, and social topics, all of which you appear to find insufficiently leftist. It's no coincidence, right? They're not poring over the remarks of somebody who's out there saying the most woke, radical, of course, racist stuff that we hear out of the BLM crowd. That's no problem. That'll get a complete pass. But Jordan Peterson gets targeted. Why? To make an example of him, right? To instill fear.
I mean, the purpose is, Matt just pointed this out, is that he's possibly the most followed Twitter account in Canada. So therein lies the problem. If he had 800 followers, I don't think they'd really mind. I mean, it's not as if they have some consistent standard. I mean, if there's standards at all, I mean, the psychologists college or whatever it is, that this governing body that says you cannot practice and you shall not be able to practice if you have these kind of opinions that we think are odd or off or not, on our side of the issue. And one of those includes calling the prime minister a prick. Whereas it is totally fine for the prime minister to be the prime minister when every time I open the paper, there's a new picture of him in blackface. But I suppose that's okay. Let's not apply these standards evenly to anyone at all. But the ridiculous thing was, by the way, Jordan Peterson has a right to appeal this. He did not appeal. He skipped that and collected his $200 and said, I'm suing you, which is the exact appropriate way of dealing with this. If there is a body that says you can or cannot practice your profession based on these political views, Matt's point is right. It is, moments like this that you do really appreciate the First Amendment. It's moments like this in Canada. It's moments like you often see in the United Kingdom where somebody has an errant tweet, or not even an errant tweet, just something that somebody finds offensive. They report it to the police and the police show up at their door and say, can you step outside? And did you write this on Twitter? There is something totalitarian about that. And then you make it worse. And how do you make it worse and more totalitarian than you could ever imagine? There's a film I just watched from 2018 called The Trial, and it is made up entirely of archival footage from a trial in 1930 in the Soviet Union of economists who were accused of being wreckers of the Soviet economy. And there is that moment, as you explained, Megyn, where to free themselves, they have to step up to the microphone and read a statement, and you can see it in their eyes that it's killing them to do so. But it's the only way that they can do so without the regime killing them. Now, this is obviously not that, but you're killing somebody's career. And to make them do that, who sits down and says, I don't like this guy's views. Let's convene a quorum of people in our society and say, hey, guys, do you guys hate Jordan Peterson too? Let's go after him. Imagine what goes through a sick mind, somebody who needs a psychologist to look at them, I suppose, to go after somebody who they just disagree with. It's repulsive.
I have never been able to compost before. It was always too complicated and too much work. Not anymore, thanks to Lomi. Lomi allows me to turn my food scraps into dirt with the push of a button. This is a countertop electric composter that turns scraps to dirt in under 4 hours. There's no smell when it runs, and it's super quiet. Thanks to Lomi, I have way less garbage each week, too. Instead, I turn this waste into nutrient-rich dirt that I can feed to my plants. Now, I'm composting and creating soil with my kids' help instead of creating waste. I have a basically limitless supply of dirt for my garden, and if you would like to join me in this endeavor and start making a positive environmental impact, or just make cleanup after dinner that much easier, Lomi is perfect for you. Go to lomi.com/MK and use the promo code MK to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/MK. Use that promo code MK at checkout. Food waste is gross. Let Lomi save you a cold trip out to the garbage can. Lomi.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.